Welcome, Graham Smith from ALEC here again. This presentation takes you through what you need to know about Section 1 of this training, the New Zealand context. And this is the first of two presentations that cover this material. You may wish to refer to your study guide or assessment guide for further information. Here's our heads up slide again with the 7 sections of our NCALNE VOC. These are also the 7 sections of how you embed literacy and numeracy into training. So just draw your attention to point number 1. That's where we are at the moment, to do with the New Zealand context. Okay, before we get into the context, we need to take a look at some of the acronyms that we use in this field. But first of all, it's worth pausing to ask what's an acronym? And what acronyms do we use in education and in literacy and numeracy? Well, what's an acronym? When you take the first letter of a series of words and make a new word out of them, that's an acronym. So our company name, ALEC, is also an acronym. Now here's some of the acronyms that we use in literacy and numeracy. Hopefully you're familiar with a couple of them. If we start on the left-hand side there, ICT, Information Communications Technology. Underneath that, DOL, TEC, MOE, some government departments. Department of Labour, of course, is DOL. The TEC, Tertiary Education Commission. MOE, Ministry of Education. NZQA, of course, you're probably familiar with, New Zealand Qualifications Authority. And then NCALE, and on the other side, NCALNE. Our qualification that we're doing at the moment is the National Certificate in Adult Literacy and Numeracy Education. So it didn't used to have an N in it, now it does have an N, so the N is for numeracy. A couple of other ones there on the right hand side, LN and LLN. LN for literacy numeracy, of course. Language literacy and numeracy, or literacy language and numeracy, is the one underneath that. Then there's ESOL and TESOL, English for speakers of other languages, and teaching English to speakers of other languages. Last one there, US 21204, that's unit standard 21204. That's the big 30 credit compulsory unit standard that we assess against as part of the qualification. So hopefully some of those are familiar. If not, you're likely to hear them at some stage through the training. Also worth thinking about your own industry. What acronyms do you use? Does your industry have its own technical language and jargon? And I like to raise that point because at the start of any new training, you need to pause and just make sure that your learners are familiar with the technical jargon and the acronyms that you use in your trade as well. So that's what we're trying to do here, just make sure you're familiar with what we're talking about. Alright, so on to the context for adult literacy and numeracy in Aotearoa, New Zealand. There's about 6 things we need to talk about, and we won't cover them all on this presentation, but just to highlight things that you need to be thinking about for your first assessment. Key initiatives in literacy and numeracy in this country, as well as the definitions that we use when we're talking about literacy and numeracy. Reasons for low levels of literacy and numeracy, and the impact of low levels of adult literacy and numeracy. Resources that you might already have access to, and specialist organisations that can help. So those are the areas that we cover in this part of the course. So we'll get onto that shortly, but really we need to first of all just talk about this. What are literacy and numeracy, or what comes to mind when you hear the words literacy and numeracy? What kind of connotations do these words have for you or for your learners? So you might want to pause and think about that for a minute. We've also got some more formal definitions that we work with. These definitions come mainly from the TEC and also from a report called Te Kawai Ora, which is where we get the definition for Māori literacy. I'll just read through them. You can find these in your study pack, but here they are. Literacy. Here's the first one. Literacy is the written and oral language that people use in everyday life and work. A person's literacy refers to the extent of their oral and written language skills and knowledge, and their ability to apply these to meet the varied demands of their personal, study and work lives. The reference for these, by the way, is in the study material as well. Here's the definition for numeracy. Numeracy is the bridge between mathematics and real life. A person's numeracy refers to their knowledge and understanding of mathematical concepts and their ability to use their mathematical knowledge to meet the varied demands of their personal, study and work lives. I really like that one because it gives me a picture to think about. Numeracy is the bridge between mathematics and real life. Here's number 3. This is the one that we're most interested in to do with this particular training. This is the definition for embedded literacy and numeracy, which is the explicit teaching and learning of literacy and numeracy within the context and tasks of another, usually vocational, subject or skill. For example, panel beating, or carpentry, or engineering, or hairdressing, and so on. Number 4, this is the definition from Māori literacy. Literacy is the lifelong journey of building the capacity to read and shape Māori and other worlds. So just pause for a minute to think about what we mean when we put inverted commas, those little dits around the word read. I think all of us read different things. We read words and we read the world around us. So just a series of 3 images for you to have a think about what it means to read with inverted commas when you look at people or when you see things in front of you. So what do you see? What do you read when you see these images? One more to come. Here we go. People pick up different things, and I won't go into it here, but it's just for you to think about, what does the word read mean? Is it always about words on a page, or can we read other things as well? Now, the implication, of course, is that yes, we all can read in different ways. So there's literacies other than just dealing with the written word. More on that in your study material as well in relation to the definition for Māori literacy and numeracy. We can also look at the situation in New Zealand for literacy and numeracy as a whakapapa, a history or a genealogy, and we can look back to the past and look at what's been done. We can look at what's going on now and also look ahead to the future. So again, we won't get time to go into every single aspect in these presentations, but just something for you to think about as you're working through your assessment task. Are you able to think of our history of literacy and numeracy in terms of a whakapapa of key events and initiatives impacting literacy and numeracy in our country? And coming up, we're going to talk about some data in terms of what our country, where our country is at for literacy and numeracy. And the thing to think about here is, are your learners representative of the rest of the country? Do they have the same issues? Are they better or worse off than anybody else? So just think about that while I'm talking about these next couple of slides. So this has to do with something called the ALL survey, which happened in 2006, where we measured literacy and numeracy skill levels for our population on a scale of 1 to 5. So I don't know whether you've heard of the ALL survey or not, but it's something that our politicians and bureaucrats still refer to when they talk about literacy and numeracy levels in New Zealand. And this data will be updated over the next couple of years, and I expect we'll see a new report out in 2016. But until we get to that point, this is what we're working with at the moment. So it's kind of a state of the nation analysis where we are looking at these 5 different levels, and if you score a 5 on the scale, you're very literate or numerate. If you score a 1 or a 2, then that's not so great. And the baseline, of course, is 3. So here's the first lot of data. Relates to something that they called prose literacy, which was to do with the kind of skills that you need to be able to read something like a magazine article or an editorial in a newspaper. And if you look at the bottom 2 numbers there, just add those together, that's the number of people, or the percentage of people who fall below the level 3 baseline for prose literacy. If you look at this next one, add those 2 numbers together on the bottom again, this is also the number of people falling below the level 3 baseline for literacy. Different kind of literacy here, it's called document literacy, which relates to the kind of skills that you need to read something like a bus timetable or a schedule, charts, tables, things like that. Number 3 here relates to numeracy, and again, just direct your attention to those two bottom numbers. In this case, we've got 31 and 20. Add those up, you get a number which is just over half. Just over half of the sample population don't meet the baseline skill level for numeracy, and this is representative of our population in New Zealand as a whole. So yeah, some cause for concern. The last one here, critical thinking. This was also part of the survey, and if you add up those two numbers there, again for level 1 and level 2, you come to around 2/3 of the population not meeting the standard for critical thinking, and of course that's probably very much related to the low levels of literacy and numeracy as well. So something to think about for yourself and for your own learners. And then I just want to leave you with this question: why do we have this problem in New Zealand? What about your learners? What does this mean for your people? So we'll pick this up again in part 2 of the presentation. Thanks very much.